to talk us about twittering and complexity.
Yeah, actually, I changed my my title a little bit, but the substance is the same. Not so much of Twitter, but
okay. Thank you. Okay, slightly different.
Different. It's been also a revolution, but we kind of like couldn't decide. About myself, I've started from the dark side, as I used to say. I've been doing some serious research also, in addition to this, quantitative studies and simulation models and such, and then jumping over the fence, coming to these meetings for 5 years or so, and I think it's really, really refreshing. But now this is kind of like a thought experiment and a very, very embryonic start of maybe a project or cooperation with scholars in different universities. So this is a very, very beginning. It's just a thought experiment, but I hope it's kind of like a thinking outside of the box, or kind of like a refreshing a way of starting to think about smart cities in a new way. And we started this with a couple of colleagues. One, myself as Seija Ridell from Tampere University, another university from Tampere in media studies, and Anuska Rantanen, who is from Helsinki, but also in our university, architect and urban planner. And we started to feel a little bit uncomfortable of the ways we are talking about smart cities these days. They are, in a way, quite narrow and locked into some certain positions. So we wanted to kind of like open up the discussion to see what comes out of that. So I need to think. So when we're talking about smart cities, this is kind of like a definition of terms. We usually refer to technological solutions which are embedded in urbanity, either new cities or existing cities, which aims at enhancing governance and performance of many ecological, economic, or political networks, often related to sustainability and greenness of cities. And these days we usually contemplate smart cities in two ways. One is, of course, the kind of conventional, old-fashioned way of techno-optimistic smart cities, where technological systems are considered to be merged into existing or new cities with the focus of only optimizing the procedures, let it be traffic or energy consumption or others. And this is, of course, a very positivistic view. And it's been widely criticized, and these days almost no one is kind of discussing about smart cities in this way, except from engineers in our school. But the problem is that all the dynamics are considered linear, yet cybernetic, and they are predictable and without questions beneficial for our species. And the second one, which is kind of like coming closer to a better understanding of cities and humans, in the second view we emphasize human aspect, but often even in a dystopic manner. And here it is implied that the smartness of cities is in a way capable of reducing or dwarfing the humanity and even democracy, because of increasing surveillance, less freedom of choice, capacity to control the masses with the smart systems, power of algorithms, and the power of those coding algorithms. So often with this view is coupled so-called human-centered technology, and we come back to that later. So even though both of these have a point, they're very, very relevant, we think that they provide a very narrow view of smart cities, even skewed. And even when they combine, they build a dualistic reading of smart city, including the role of a human in the city. So we suggest here that there could be a territory between these, or some kind of a third option. And we would like to look closer at it now, because we think that that could provide new viewpoints to understanding the future ways of life, future ways of governance and planning the smart cities. So as a wider framework, we have adopted Jennifer Gabri's approach of programmable city, and particularly the concept of environmentalism in it, which is the term that comes originally from Foucault. Environmentality refers to biopolitical ways of governance, and it implies that instead of controlling the subject, we control the environment, which then impacts the subject. Which is often the case if we think about smart cities and techno networks. We are actually kind of steering people with these systems. And the programmability of cities implies a completely new attitude towards coupled human-environment relationships. And Jennifer Gabry sees that these two are inseparable. We would like to deepen this perspective even more. We are introducing a novel actor, network, and new ways of being in smart city as in everyday life as avatars. So we claim that by doing this, we can help us to step outside the kind of our comfort zone or towards unconventional or even inconvenience. It's kind of like approaching to uncanny territory between this techno-optimism and traditional critical democracy and social sciences. We think that this kind of valley of uncanny reveals, in a way, a soft underbelly of smart cities and the ways how we might experience the future smart urbanity in probably completely new ways. With other words, networks act as a probe to the otherness and uncanny of cities and its multifaceted nature. This is a picture of computer dreams, which is very, very uncanny. Okay, we can say that humans have always co-evolved hand in hand with technology. The tools have always been part of us, they've been part of our evolution and participated in it. And today we are physically coupled with many kind of gizmo. We are practically grown together with our smartphones. We're touching them more than any living being in the world, more than 200 times a day. That's a lot. And so they're part of us. We're already cyborgs. But this is not all of it. Through these machines, we are inseparable and interactive part of very many networks, from social media and different other networks in the internet to various network services like banks and bonus card systems. We can consider us as networked cyborgs, which we call networks. So what difference does it make? We say that a lot. These gizmos do not only make our everyday life easier as it is now, but they have potential to change it completely. And if we think about how well we could kind of predict 5-10 years ago how we would be using our smartphones today, the prediction would have been impossible. So that's the case now too. We think about 10 years, 20 years from now. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so as we can well see, the possibilities in technology are limitless. Maybe the best example or the most known example of a real-life cyborg is Neil Harbison on the top corner. There. Who has attached an equipment to his skull through which he can hear colors, because he's an artist who is colorblind, totally colorblind from the birth. And so he kind of feels like he gained a new sense totally. So he can play colors. And bringing this further, we can get other new senses. We can get a sense of time, sense of direction. We can get night vision, ability to see through walls. We can even sense earthquakes, like another actor, Moon Riba, who is a dancer, and she is feeling through some sort of gizmo earthquakes all around the globe in her body, and she dances, uses as an instrument for her dance. So furthermore, we can use custom prosthetic limbs to telekinetically operate lights, as is the case in the third, Kevin Warwick, who has a kind of arm connected to his nervous system, so he can use telekinesis to operate lights. So we can easily think that if we can do that with a prosthetic limb, why not do that with our smartphones? So because if we remember the famous quote of Andrew Rowe, in technology, what can be done will be done. On the positive side, we can think that, in addition to superpowers, of course, we can think that this could mean that we become better coupled with the environment and nature. If we can feel earthquakes, maybe later we can feel a global temperature rise, sea level rise, or CO2 levels, and that creates a shorter feedback from global systems to ourselves, our action. So, at the same time, we will not only operate the smart city cybernetic networks or just be regulated by them, but we are in constant interaction with this ever-present, interactive, responsive, and self-regulating technology through various sensors, monitoring, surveillance systems, wearable technology, IoT, and much more, like communicating trash cans. We will participate not only in human technology, but also technology communication. And we actually become one with these network systems. So now we can ask about how about humanity, democracy, and participation and such. They will not disappear, but they change. Since the participation and democracy becomes embedded into the computational urbanity, we are not going to participate anymore through discourse, but through action. Even though we are constantly monitored, censored, and steered by these systems, we can also respond to this steering by start to manipulate the system, start to make the system work for us. Because everything is based on cybernetic feedback loops. So we claim that the citizenship is not necessarily dwarfed, but it's changed. It's going to be different. Humans are not distinct from the city, they co-evolving together, and humans are embedded to the environment. So here the cybernetic connections become more important than individual engagement as such. And Jennifer Gabriels again considers that instead of citizens, we can start to call ourselves as individuals, which are many kinds of urban operators, expressions of computer environment, that they're not just humans, but they're human machines or even machines. Again, if we're extending this, we suggest that our existences will change in other way too. For network, it's kind of like a natural way of being is its existence as avatars. And avatars are basically the characters we use online every day, in games, but also in social media and other networks. In programmable network city, they become more and more numerous. They're occupying larger and larger shares of our lives. And Judith Matthäus has she proposed that there are kind of two questions about our existence through avatars. It's a question about identity and body, kind of like stretching our identity from the physical body towards the virtual one. And the question of a physical and virtual body, whether we are going to use the virtual body as substitute to mask extension or a clone of our kind of like physical, not real, but physical existence, because everything is real. Typically, as avatars, we are reproducing ourselves over and over again. We exist in multiple places simultaneously, probably forever. And our virtual and corporeal being is totally interlaced. So we think also that avatars extends to our existence to the uncanny area we wanted to enter. It's kind of like revealing many kind of unnatural things like encounters with oneself or someone who's deceased. And also idealized avatars may provide kind of peepholes to what we really want to hide from ourselves. And they also reveal something from the system's inherent complexity. So we actually, this actually leads us to the last but not the least point. No matter how linear, optimal and rational design technology we will use in smart cities, it will be anyways a very complex mixture of overlapping human-machine and machine-machine networks on networks, and of course incrementally written codes, which is probably, very probably, not working as it should be. So smart city is by default a very, very complex adaptive system beyond what we're witnessing today. So we will face unpredictable patterns, processes and ways of life in smart cities. It's actually a question of whether we think that we are facing a transition, a bifurcation, so to say. If not, that's fine, we just continue the business as usual, just living in cities with a lot of technology. But if it is, it's worth a little bit of attention, and that's why we consider it's important now. So, consequently, to kind of like, to start to understand what are the challenges to planning, governance, and the total of understanding of the smart city in general, we have to understand the extreme complexity of a programmable city and the human nature potentially existing as network avatars. So, regarding planning, there are of course very many simple questions about the quality of everyday environment in this dynamic computational virtual spatial environment, extremely unpredictable patterns, for example, regarding location principles, or about how do we use the cyber superpowers. But there's also a question of drastic formation of presumable authentic humanity. Instead of human-centered planning and governance, we might need to talk about human-machine-centered approaches. And we're not going here to the possibility that the system is gaining consciousness or so. So what to study? Well, this is a good question, and since the time is up, it's a good question to the audience. So this is only a thought experiment, so let's discuss.
Thank you, Jenny. We have an appointed respondent, Loretta, for this session.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is really, really interesting, and I think this is one of the big challenges we face. I only had the aspect I wasn't 100% sure what to expect, but what I'm interested in is, I think, this kind of evolution, if you want to, from identity which is localized to identity which is in networks. So I would talk about identity, this, like how does the person identify with the environment, and where is locality in this whole thing? So then for me the question is, does locality as something that defines us get completely lost, or where is it? Because when we talk about spatial planning, normally we talk about it's kind of locally or geographically bound. And if I see that, I think maybe we have to naturally really evolve into also governance systems which go that direction rather than that direction. And then I find that really difficult, because that again might be possible in highly networked parts of our global system, and in other parts it might not be possible. So anyway, just probably the question is, where do you see locality in this?
That's an excellent question, and that's kind of the starting point of the whole thing. It started when I went to, in Tampere, there was a Mindtrek conference, and there was two moments when I kind of felt astonished. One was when I met Neil Harbison, the actual cyborg. He's just so bright and so kind of like the person who's open to everything. He's going to attach all this kind of gizmo to himself. And then I went to a virtual reality for the first time. And I kind of realized that this is going to change everything, because if you get new senses, you can see through walls and you can operate in dark and such. It redefines the feeling of the sense of the place and how you identify yourself locally. At the same time, when you're more and more in these virtual environments, it kind of changes of how you feel your body, because your existence is stretching to all these kind of like networks. So I can't really answer to a question. I think it's going to change, and I think we have to really be mindful of what is happening. Or as Joe Ferreira from MIT said last week in AAG, he said that we have to keep the eye on the ball. So I think that's the thing. It's a really, really tricky question.
Hannes?
Yeah, you said something about identity, and I just noticed how you used the word you, where you can be, your body sensitivity can only be at one place at a time. I mean, where my avatar is doing stuff in some game when I'm cooking my dinner, okay, that's fine. Also with virtual reality, in order to experience it, you have to, or in order for your body to experience it, because you expand this new identity, you have to be attached to it. And you say, well, we can walk through walls. I'm confused in how this is bodily walking through walls and how it's important to relate.
We can't walk, we can probably see through walls, but
or we can see through
kind of
walls.
like a relationship to the spaces.
Do we see through walls, or do we see through virtual?
No, real walls. We can get the senses of kind of like is it infrared or something? You can kind of sense the networks, and that's kind of like really. Yeah, but you have a question.
So first Luke, then sci-fi, then Louis, then...
Yeah, well I think that's what very good question. what Judith Matthias was talking about, not having kind of a closed identity that you are fixed, but being able to stretch it. So you kind of, as you said, you can be simultaneously in multiple places, and kind of like it's probably very subtly of you.
Thank you for reminding me of places where I was busy in the beginning of the 90s, which lost somewhere in the 90s. Nevertheless, my question is, do you think that complexity can be programmed? And if not, is then there a smart world and a complex world? And like the story of Barbara yesterday, will make the smart city as dumb?
I don't know if complexity can be programmed. I see the programmable city more like a city with a lot of computational systems which are either programmed or programmed by our action. We are kind of like impacting to the city all the time through its sensors. So we're kind of playing the city, and the city is responding, vice versa. The dumbness, I don't think I get the question right.
Like Barbara yesterday said, okay, engineers has given us that, so we start to build in problem areas.
Oh, yeah,
So when we have a very smart city, we don't think about anything anymore. We just walk
that's true.
across the street and we'll be.
That's one thing. I remember because I was in another meeting, Association of American Geographers last week, and I went to very many smart city tracks. So one thing that came up was that we are going to rely on more and more of these programs and these algorithms, which is kind of scary because we're becoming dumber. We're just letting we're already doing it, we're letting the algorithms to lead us. And we don't understand, it's a black box, so we can't even understand how it's working. It's really dangerous. It's uncanny too. It's uncanny, right? Who's next?
Yes.
Sci-fi.
So Jenny, first of all, thank you. It was really, really interesting. And the one question that comes up in my reading all what you opened for us, when the last question that you asked is that clearly all of this is changing the cognitive ecology of us as humans. So, for example, if we used to have books that were kind of processing our opinion, now we can go on the net and find books which are very specifically directed. So the processing of opinions, it's very different. And senses, actually I worked on this a bit, and our physical perception of ourselves is extremely plastic, which means it really takes 1 hour to get used to a new sense, but we don't really understand how this reprogram our behavior, our trust, our instinctive reactions. So I think that this research of how the cognitive ecology is changing and how it transforms the way we interact. And in this sense, it's not about programmability. It is about programmability, but maybe in the sense of as well trying to understand which kind of environments are social or social prone, and which kind of environments are extremely alienating, because this we already see it in the last century. This is something that already took place. So, and it can be even more radicalized with this kind of algorithms. It's like you have things responding to you through algorithms that are made to make you believe that the world is cheating you, for example. What will happen after years that we use this?
I'm thinking about having those algorithms like everywhere, like embedded in the whole system.
And I think you are pointing to a very interesting junction, because it's like the whole discussion of artificial intelligence, it is kind of focused on this mega entity that will come up and shoot at us and kill us, while I think that artificial intelligence by now is everywhere. It's running most of the decision-making machines, and it's influencing the way we perceive and respond to the world, and nobody is really studying this. Nobody is really
Nobody is in control. And I just read an article last week about that artificial intelligence, when they're using these learning loops and neural networks. We don't really understand anymore what they're thinking. So they might not be conscious yet, but we can't follow the thinking. So they're doing their own decisions. We're just trying to steer them with the algorithms and not doing apparently a very good job every time.
Thank you. We have 3 more questions and not so much time, so invite you to try to synthesize your contributions. Nurit.
Short question. Just aligning with taking your session about the democracy more seriously. That what this world is already approaching. And we know that there are several people selling us hardware and software, and they control the information. And what do you think about democracy? Suddenly we see that there is a hierarchy of powers that is much more powerful than our rules and our way to detect who is controlling who. So what do you think about democracy in these terms? Because the vision is so, everybody attracts, connects with everybody is able to talk and to express themselves, but we're not really in a democracy. We're operated by some specific powers that are much powerful.
That's true, because and I think that's something we really have to start talking about, because there is this danger that we are giving away our power to corporations, to algorithms and such. And so I think we get kind of like carried away if we start to only talk about human-centered technology, the second option, like kind of like talking about twittering and bottom-up organization, and forget about the algorithms and corporations and such. So that's a really, really big thing. And I think that's, I don't have an answer But I think we have to pay attention to that. We start to do some research. Sorry?
I have PhD students working on this. We
Please.
can talk about it later.
I would love to hear more. Yeah.
Well, my question is related to it actually because you introduced the term of democracy, but then at the end of your presentation, rightly, you introduced the fact that these technologies are individually sensed, it's like an individual experience, so how the democratic action, I mean, if democracy is not, there was a slide when you were saying that democracy will change in this new smart city technological, but if everybody has a very individual experience, how can actually collect action or...
That's a good question. I don't know how it's going to change, but it's been proposed that it changes. It's going to change, and we have all the capacity to start using direct democracy methods, for example. But that's not simple because we have opportunities to manipulate the system and kind of like get carried away in the wrong directions and kind of like these more circles and such. But it's a big thing because I think democracy is the biggest innovation of our time. So smart city is kind of like left behind far.
Very final question.
But that.
Maybe staying in the same area, but I'm trying to, I like very much what you said there was a bifurcation or a transition, because I think it might be both.
Yeah.
And there seems to be an online and offline maybe variant of the bifurcation. And the planet we inhabit was discovered through time, and this was a sort of commons public space in which bodies interacted. But this online experience, enhanced experience, is created by some and then consumed by others. So there's a question of property, data centers, internet connections, all kinds of physical infrastructure that make this possible. Have that been part of your considerations of how to develop? But what I think is very interesting is the sensorial capacity so that individuals can feel what scientists learn about through years. For example, sea level rise, they augment consciousness. But then there's this question through which lines and through which spaces, through what public space is this transmitted?
Yeah, that's true, and they are privatized. They are like corporations mostly who are operating these networks. And then it's a question of kind of like including, excluding, or like purposefully excluding yourself, kind of being left out from the system, and what happens then. They're big questions for the future. But it's great to hear these comments. I'm going to take everything back home and I will elaborate.
Thank you, Jenny, very much for this wonderful presentation. Thank you, Sharon, also. Thank you for this session. You have to have this back for that. You have to have this back for that.
Don't forget to fill in the cards on what line for information warriors.
That's